Do you happen to have another story that you might be able to share with us?
Ooh, okay, yeah. So let me find something else. So my other finished copies or stories, let me pull them up. I have I have Woodland, I have Wounds, I have My Dear Sister, and Mommy You're Poison, Daddy I'm Famous.
Hmm.
Make your selection.
Mm, can you tell me the names of the first two ones that you said?
Yeah, it's Woodland, Wounds,
Woodlands. Let's do
Woodland.
Woodland. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wilderness. Or I'm sorry, Woodland. Wow. Completely different title. Um, will he find her? Hours swept by as daylight slipped away. She has been walking for hours, barefoot in the wilderness, her feet bleeding, her flesh burning. But she has to keep moving. She can't stop. She won't let him find her. Dazed and confused, the lack of energy has her stumbling over brush and tripping over her own feet. She hasn't eaten in days. The pain in her stomach didn't matter. She wanted to live. She faced true horror for months, entangled in the savagery of a human monster. Her flesh left with bite and burn marks. He branded her with scars to imprint the reality that she belonged to him. Could she ever go back to real life? The life she lived only 6 months prior. She was a carefree 22-year-old, hungry for adventure. Now, she only exists as a shell, brutalized and hungry for sustenance. Does he know she's gone? That she cut the rope binding her wrist? Rope burns glowed dark red and throbbed in pain. She was lucky. Usually he kept her chained beside his bed with a dog collar around her neck. However, he trusted her to be bound by rope this day. As she walked through the trees, nothing looked familiar. She was lost. Would she die here? Should she go back and beg for forgiveness? She wanted to scream, to cry, to bash her own skull against the rock. She must not give up. She survived his brutality, the torture and abuse, yet she didn't even know his name. He would make her call him master. Those swift steps, motivated by the sweet taste of freedom, turned into a slow and painful shuffle. The air began to cool, and her only covering was a ripped and stained oversized shirt that fell above her knees. Her attire was nothing like the outfit she wore the night he took her. That night she was dressed in a tight-fitting mini dress, high heel stilettos, and a cloud of innocence. It was a Saturday night. Now, she had no idea what day it was. She struggled to remember her real life. She wanted to cry. Oh God, how she wanted to sob and fall apart, but she couldn't. The wilderness of Pennsylvania could conceal her. The darkness of the woods could consume her. She must not stop. Her cracked lips and dry mouth felt like sandpaper compared to her days of fruit-flavored lip gloss and expensive lipstick. Twigs broke beneath her feet as she stepped, hoping not to bring notice to her presence. She could feel the mosquitoes biting at her bare skin. She slapped them away as she continued to walk, but slower and slower she went. She rested against a tree and closed her eyes. All that flashed through her mind was an intense thirst. But wait, she heard water. She opened her eyes and moved her head in search of a river or a spring. She closed her eyes to listen, and seconds later, she stumbled in the direction of the water. The faint sound of running liquid led to a powerful stream, water running and crashing against rocks. Falling to her knees, she crawled through the grass on all fours, weakness taking over her. Her tongue brushed against the inside of her cheek, burned. No saliva to swallow her excitement. Leaning over the water, she saw a calm patch, and the sight of her reflection startled her. Sunken face, exposed cheekbones, and dark and dead eyes. Who is this person? Without hesitation, she cupped her hands in the liquid, scooping it to her mouth. She took it in. Gulping it down, so crisp, she wanted more. It slithered down her dry throat. She continued until she got her fill. She splashed her face and rubbed it over her skin. The dirt began to lift and run like veins. Her damp shirt clung to her. She fell back, seated on her rear, tears forming. She cupped her face. She can do this. She needed to keep going. She could live and be a symbol of hope. Eyes closed, she wiped her face. One more drink, and I'll continue, she thought. This was her escape. She leaned over the water, and with her hands cupped, she opened her eyes. She began scooping more and bringing it to her mouth, sipping and seated on her knees, continuing to drink. Moments passed as she looked in her reflection. To her horror, he stood behind her. How did he notice? How did she not notice him creeping up behind her? How could she be this stupid? Liquid from her mouth released and began to run down her chin as she began panting. Tears formed. She began using every ounce of energy she had to scramble to her feet. He wrapped his arm around her neck, tucking her into the dip of his forearm. He leaned back and began squeezing. She clawed and struggled, trying to gain her freedom. He lifted her up as he stood, and her body stretched out, gravity pulling her down as he held her neck. She gasped for freedom and relief, wailed her body. He only squeezed harder, squirming for air, for freedom. This was the end. Crack went her neck and limp went her body. Her feet dangled an inch above the ground, her toes grazing the grass and dirt. The episode only took about 5 minutes. She lasted longer than he thought she would. He released her body and she fell limp to the ground, a thud as she hit the solid earth. This was his favorite part, the hunt. Number 11 didn't disappoint. It was fun while it lasted, but the cleanup needed to happen. He grabbed her ankles and dragged her body across the terrain. He had picked her gravesite ahead of time, a spot between 2 tall trees. He began to dig, unearthing the dirt where she wouldn't be found. If she had simply just kept walking, she would have found a busy highway only a mile away. She could have lived. After digging for some time, he scooped her carcass and threw her into the casket of earth. As he began covering her, the thoughts of what he would do to victim number 12 floated through his mind, bringing a smile to his face. The end.